Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Final Destination Bloodlines, the sixth installment into the Final Destination film franchise. This installment is directed by Zach Leprosky and Adam Stein. And these two gentlemen I knew years ago. Well, I don't know them personally, but I remember them on a short-lived reality show called On the Lot. It was a reality show where I think Steven Spielberg was the executive producer of, where they were trying to find directors, and these two were on that show. And I remembered them clearly because the little short film that they made for that competition I thought was one of the best in the competition, but they end up losing. But they always stuck out for me because I wanted to look out for them whenever they put something out. But it's been years, and finally we get to see it. Now they've been working. They've directed episodes on television and whatnot, but this is the first feature film that I can find that they directed, and throwing their names into the hat for this franchise, which is probably one of the better horror franchises in the past 25 years. Final Destination. It's just an exciting, fun time. There's nothing that will go down in the annals of history as the greatest horror franchise. I don't believe that it will ever be up on that type of pedestal, but as far as an enjoyable franchise, I really enjoyed the previous 5 films in this film series. So when they announced Final Destination Bloodlines, the 6th film in this franchise, I was all in. I was ready because it's been 14 years since the last one. We're long overdue for a Final Destination film. In this version, in this installment, a college student who inherits a sudden premonition her grandmother had in 1968 about a tower collapse and attempts to save her entire family after death, starts killing them one by one because they should not have ever existed. This was the hooking point for me. You know, after 5 films, you had to kind of sauce it up a little bit, put a little hot sauce on it, you know, instead of having the same old trope of somebody has a premonition, an event happens, a tragic event happens, and that person stops people from dying, and now death is after them. Now, this is the same thing, but it's a little twist to it. This go around, you add the element of somebody cheating death, and death didn't get to that individual. Now that that person has extended their family, death is after that family, because if death plan would have went as initially planned, nobody in this family would exist. So now death is coming after everybody. What a premise. And man, what a movie. If you're a fan of Final Destination, this is a return to form. This is a welcome back to the franchise movie. I so enjoyed this movie. This movie starts off with the opening sequence. You know, the opening sequence is always the tragedy, the one that kicked it off. That tragedy that an individual has a premonition and saves the lives or whatever. But you get to see the premonition. You see this premonition. They're in this. I'm not spoiling anything. This is in the trailer. They're in this kind of a Space Needle type restaurant, you know, the Space Needle in Seattle, but this is not that. It's a different place. It's this restaurant. The floor is glass, and they go up to the top. It is, you know, and the building isn't really up to code. They rushed it to open it up, to have this grand opening, and so it's not up to code. And the patrons of that establishment paid the price. And so when this woman has this premonition, she saves a few people from this devastation, or well, one or two, I believe. But either way, um, she saves them, and now we fast forward what 50 something years later. What about what is it? What 57 years later, and now death has come around for this family. This was That's opening sequence was amazing. I loved it, and what I loved about it, what a couple of installments in this franchise was missing, that the other installments did fairly well, was the presence of death. Death doesn't have a physical embodiment throughout these films. You don't see a hooded man with a giant sickle. And you know what I'm saying? It's not that. It's just the presence. You feel his presence or its presence. And a couple of films didn't have that element, and I didn't really enjoy those films as much as the others. This film has that element. You feel the presence of death. You feel death putting these things in motion to take these people out, and you knew it right off the bat. You felt it right off the bat. Exciting opening sequence. And speaking of all the deaths that occurred in that sequence throughout this film, this was some of the best, and dare I say brutal, death scenes or kills in the series. They really upped the ante here. They upped it in a good way. You know, it's and I know that sounds kind of sadistic, but you know, it's entertainment. This was brutal in some of the deaths that took place throughout this film, and the setup was even more brutal than the actual kills, because they took their time. The filmmakers took their time with it. You know, it didn't rush. It didn't rush it through, but it wasn't taking its time in the sense of dragging. It was just the setup, and it was to build the tension. What's next? Because there was some false setups there. You know, this is going to take them out. No, it's actually this piece. No, it's going to be this. No, actually, all of them come together in some shape, form, or fashion, and it leads up to a brutal kill. It was phenomenal. I loved the setups of all the kills in this movie. It was an amazing reveal in this film that tied it into the other movies. Not going to spoil it. Not really going to go deep into why I loved it so much, because it was so simple, so subtle, but effective in a major way. How they tied all the films to this movie and make it a part of the overall universe of, you know, the cinematic universe of Final Destination. But I thought that was very unique and simple. You know, something I didn't think of going into this film. And as the film was playing out, you know, it didn't hurt the film any. It didn't really help the film. It was just a nod and a wink to the audience and the fans of this franchise. I thought was brilliant on the behalf of everybody involved here. Uh, my negatives of this film is the third act. The third act kind of drug, and it drug not in a not in a pacing type of way. Is more of a story wrap up type of way. You know, it felt kind of anticlimactic. It felt like it was just, okay, let's just end the movie here. You know, and that's what it felt like. You know, we got enough on screen. I think everybody's enjoyed themselves. Let's just end the movie here. And that's basically what the last 20 minutes of the movie was. It was just wrapping it up. You know, nothing new. You didn't discover anything. It was just whatever, you know. And now there was some cool little scenes in there, but nothing to whereas I was like, oh man, this is going to set itself apart from the rest of the Final Destination films. It didn't. It didn't at the end. Um, Act One, Act Two, it did. Act One and Act Two was the best of this series. I was like, man, this is number one in all of the Final Destination films. But then that end kind of, it just drug. Not not bad enough to the point where I'm like, oh, this movie was trash. It was far from that. It was far from that. This was a really fun time, and also the acting. Some of the actors here were, to put it plainly and as nice as I can, they felt like CW actors. On those actors you see on the CW on those shows and whatnot. The same kind of formulaic style of acting. That's pretty much what we got in this movie. But I'm not really harping on that too hard, because you go in a movie like this, you're not looking for Denzel Washington quality acting. You're not looking for Meryl Streep quality acting here. You just want to see the death and the kills and all that other good stuff. But the acting was what it was. Aside from that, I really didn't have any problems with the movie. I had a really good time with it, and everything wrapped up fairly nicely in the end. And I put it real high up there in the echelons of Final Destination films. Final Destination Bloodlines gets a letter grade of a B minus. Really good time, really good horror movie, really good installment in this franchise. I would like to know, what did you think of Final Destination Bloodlines if you checked it out? Or are you planning on checking it out this weekend? Let me know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, look for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Don't forget about our YouTube channel, the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Final Destination's Bloodlines. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.